Welcome to Cheap Talk, the podcast where we dissect life's little dilemmas. Today we're diving deep into the treacherous waters of relationship comparisons, specifically the dreaded X factor.
Ooh, juicy. Everyone's been there, right? Scrolling through old photos, wondering, were they happier then? It's a recipe for relationship disaster.
Exactly. This article we're discussing calls it retroactive jealousy. Basically, it's that uneasy feeling, that nagging suspicion that your partner treated their ex better than they treat you.
Right, and it can spiral quickly. Even small differences can make you feel like, oh, they took their ex on fancy vacations, but we just stay home and watch Netflix. Cue the insecurity.
Totally. But this article makes a fascinating point. It says this jealousy might actually be a misconception. And even better, it suggests no one treats every partner exactly the same.
Wait, really? I mean, that makes sense logically, but emotionally? It's hard to swallow. So what's the reasoning behind this?
Well, first off, people change. What someone needed and wanted 5 years ago might be totally different from what they need now. Their priorities shift, their values evolve. So the way they express love changes too.
That's interesting. So, like, maybe they showered their ex with gifts because back then they equated love with grand gestures, but now they show love through acts of service, like making you breakfast every morning, even if you don't get those big, flashy presents, right?
Precisely. Or maybe, with their ex, communication was their love language. They spent hours talking and texting. Now their love language is quality time, so they prioritize actually being with you, present and engaged, even if you don't have those marathon phone calls.
Okay, so people change, their needs change, got it. But what about the fact that every relationship is a two-way street? Doesn't the other person, the ex in this case, also influence the dynamic?
Absolutely. This article talks about the interpersonal field, which is basically the unique dynamic that exists between two people. So your partner might have acted differently with their ex because their ex brought out a different side of them.
Oh, I see what you mean. Maybe they were super insecure with their ex who had an avoidant attachment style, so they overcompensated by being extra attentive, almost clingy. But with you, a secure and loving partner, they feel safe enough to relax and be their true selves.
Exactly. It's like a dance. Different partners, different steps. It doesn't necessarily mean they loved one more than the other. It just means the dance was different. And there's that whole attachment theory thing, you know? Secure, anxious, avoidant, different pairings create completely different relationship dynamics.
Right, this is making so much sense. Instead of asking, do you love me or them, the real question should be, why does this bother me?
Exactly. Maybe it's highlighting an unmet need in your current relationship, something you haven't even consciously acknowledged. Like maybe seeing your partner lavish attention on their ex makes you realize you crave more verbal affirmation, or maybe you're feeling a bit neglected lately. Yeah?
Yeah, totally. So it's less about them and their ex and more about us, about what's happening right here, right now in this relationship. It's a chance for introspection, for growth, maybe even for a deeper connection with your partner once you talk it through. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for breaking this down.
So it's not just about people changing, right? It's also about how they interact with different personalities. Remember that interpersonal field thing we were talking about? Like how each relationship creates its own unique little world?
Yeah, like my friend Sarah, total sweetheart, right? She's a completely different person around her super critical mom than she is with her goofy, laid back best friend.
Totally. Different people bring out different sides of us. It's fascinating, really. So applying that to romantic relationships.
It means your partner might have acted one way with their ex because that's the dynamic they created together. Doesn't mean they loved them more, just differently.
Precisely. And that takes a load off, doesn't it? Knowing it's not necessarily a comparison of how much they loved each person, but more a reflection of the unique dance they had with each partner. Oh, and you know what else is a game changer? Attachment theory.
Oh, yeah? Tell me more.
Well, you know how some people are super secure in relationships, while others are more anxious or maybe even avoidant? Well, these attachment styles can dramatically impact how a relationship plays out. Like, imagine someone with an anxious attachment style paired with someone who's avoidant fireworks, right? But maybe not the good kind.
Definitely. That sounds like a recipe for drama, maybe even codependency. And how does that tie into retroactive jealousy?
Well, if your partner's ex had an anxious attachment style, maybe your partner had to constantly reassure them, shower them with attention. It wasn't necessarily about love, but more about managing that specific dynamic. You, on the other hand, might be super secure so they don't feel the need to do all that extra stuff.
Whoa. Okay, that's a huge perspective shift. So instead of comparing ourselves to the ex, the real work is understanding ourselves, our own attachment style, and how that influences our current relationship.
Exactly. And then understanding our partner's attachment style and how that interacts with ours creates a much more fulfilling relationship, you know? So much less drama.
Right? Less drama, more understanding. So, bottom line, stop scrolling through those old Instagram photos, people. Focus on what you have now, not what your partner had then. It's a different story, a different dance. Deal with the now, yeah?
So, we were talking about how different attachment styles can really shake things up in a relationship, right? Like, if your partner's ex was super anxious, maybe your partner had to, like, constantly reassure them, give them tons of attention. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not necessarily about love per se, but more about navigating that particular dynamic, almost like walking on eggshells.
Exactly. Whereas with you, maybe you're more secure so they don't feel the need to, well, to do all that extra stuff, you know?
Right. Which can make you feel like, wait a minute, why didn't I get the grand gestures? But it's not about you, really. It's about them and their ex and that whole anxious avoidant tango they had going on.
It's like each relationship has its own soundtrack, right? Sometimes it's a romantic ballad, sometimes it's a chaotic symphony.
Ha! I love that analogy. A chaotic symphony. So true. This whole conversation is such a game changer. It really shifts the perspective from what's wrong with me to what was going on there.
Totally. It's about understanding the dynamics at play, the attachment styles, the individual personalities. It's like relationship archaeology, you know? Digging into the past to understand the present. Oh, and speaking of understanding, did you catch that bit in the article about self awareness?
Oh, yeah? Fill me in.
Well, it talks about how understanding your own attachment style is just as important, if not more so, than figuring out your partner's. It's about knowing what you bring to the table, what your needs are, what your triggers are, right?
So, like, if I know I have an anxious attachment style, I can recognize when I'm spiraling and communicate that to my partner instead of, letting the retroactive jealousy monster take over. Yeah?
Precisely. It's about owning your stuff, your insecurities, your baggage, all of it, and then having the courage to talk about it with your partner. It's like vulnerability is the key to unlocking a deeper connection.
Which is like the exact opposite of what retroactive jealousy does, right? It builds walls, creates distance, breeds resentment.
Exactly. So to wrap this all up,
Retroactive jealousy? Not cute. Self awareness? Super cute. Communication is key. Got it.
you got it. And on that note, we reached the end of another episode of Cheap Talk. A huge thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. Remember, like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and remember, folks, every relationship is its own unique dance. Bye, everyone.
Catch you later.